A trial that could shake the foundation of the criminal justice system in Illinois is set to begin soon in Chicago. 7 prosecutors and police officers are accused of fabricating the evidence that sent an innocent man named Rolando Cruz to death row for the rape and murder of a 10-year-old girl. What is most disturbing about this story is that another man, a man who actually confessed to the murder, has not been prosecuted for it and may never be. For nearly 10 years, Rolando Cruz sat on death row, counting the days until his execution. But ever since Cruz and 2 other men were first arrested in 1983 for the rape and murder of Jeanine Nicarico in the Chicago suburb of Naperville, serious doubts were raised about their guilt. There was no physical evidence or eyewitness testimony linking any of them to the crime. Even one of the lead detectives assigned to the case, John Sam, was convinced they didn't do it.
I told my bosses on numerous occasions that I did not believe these 3 men had anything whatsoever to do with this crime, that we have totally have the wrong people. We need to go out and look at someone else.
And they said to you?
No. No more.
Don't investigate?
Don't do another thing.
Why?
Because I was making the case look bad. If I was out looking at other people, that means we weren't too convinced that they were guilty, and once they were indicted, they didn't want that out.
Rolando Cruz, now enter a world-famous mystery writer who also happens to be a lawyer, Scott Turow, whose bestsellers include Presumed Innocent and Burden of Proof. Turow decided to take on a real-life murder mystery after he was convinced that, in this case, the wrong men were sent to death row. He handled the second appeal for Alex Hernandez.
Can you imagine committing a murder of this nature and leaving behind no physical evidence of any kind, not a fingerprint, not a hair, not a fiber, no DNA? Come on. Come on.
You've written several successful novels involving murder and the criminal justice system. How does the plot in this case measure up?
This is a very sad story. This is a really, really sad story.
According to Turow, it started with political pressure to make an arrest. Pressure from voters in the affluent community where the murder victim lived. And the prosecutors responded to it, Turow says, by indicting Rolando Cruz and the 2 others just 2 weeks before a hotly contested election for the job of top prosecutor in DuPage County.
That community was up in arms, and they demanded, they demanded justice.
There was pressure on the police and prosecutors to bring someone
Absolutely.
to the system, try them, convict them, put them away.
You're going to be an ineffective law enforcement person in their eyes if you don't come up with a perpetrator.
But twice, a jury looked at this case. 2 separate juries found these guys guilty.
Are you asking me why?
That's pretty compelling evidence, isn't it?
It's not compelling evidence if you don't put the case on straight.
And the case that was made against Rolando Cruz was anything but straight, especially one highly incriminating piece of evidence which was used to convict Cruz. It was a statement Cruz allegedly made about a dream he had, which police said contained details of the crime that only the murderer could have known. The problem with this so-called dream statement is that Cruz said he never made it, and nobody has a record of it ever occurring. There's no police report, no tape recording, and the first time it was ever mentioned was a 1.5 years after he supposedly made it, and just 4 days before Cruz went on trial. Thomas Knight prosecuted Rolando Cruz in his first trial. Knight says the dream statement was just one part of the case against Rolando Cruz, and he had no reason to question its validity.
You decided to present incriminating evidence against Cruz based in part on this dream statement, and yet the police who heard it never wrote it down, they never made a report about it, they never recorded it. Something doesn't sound right.
You know, people are not that perfect that they end up writing everything down.
They wrote everything else down?
Well, I don't think that's probably not even true.
My experience is that when the defendant confesses, the police always write that down. There's There's no conceivable reason that you would not make a record of an incredibly incriminating statement. Not in my experience as a lawyer.
But an even more incredibly incriminating statement was made when, soon after Rolando Cruz was sent to death row after his first trial, this man, Brian Dugan, a career criminal, told authorities that he was the one who killed Jeanine Nicarico. Dugan confessed to the Nicarico murder after he was arrested and confessed to 2 other murders in neighboring counties. He was sentenced to life in prison, but the new prosecutor on the case in DuPage County, Robert Colander, chose not to believe Brian Dugan killed Jeanine Nicarico.
The prosecutors believed they had closed the case.
They put him on death row, and I don't think they had a second thought about it until Brian Dugan showed up.
27-year-old Brian Dugan turned up less than 3 months later when police arrested him for raping and murdering a 7-year-old girl. To escape the death penalty, Dugan was willing to confess to that crime and several others. One of his victims, he claimed, was Jeanine Nicarico. Rolando Cruz and Alex Hernandez had been on death row for the rape and murder of Jeanine Nicarico less than 3 months when another man suddenly claimed responsibility. His name was Brian Dugan, a 27-year-old with a long record for sexual assault and burglary. Illinois State Police